Cool, but good morning and welcome to this endurance project workshop. So this is a hybrid event this morning. So we actually have a lot of people online and we have some people physical. My name's Scott Allison, so I'm head of water at Clean, and I'm representing one of the project partners here. We have 1 hour online session, a lot to get through, so I'll go quite quickly through this. And just quickly about the endurance project. This is a Erasmus Plus funded project, specifically about developing training and support tools for cluster managers and ecosystem, people that work in the ecosystem to support startup and SMEs to help address the green transition related to the green EU Green Deal. There we go. As I said, I'm from Clean, the Danish Water and Environmental Cluster. And we have other partners, AMUEBLA from Spain, Furniture Cluster. We also have the University of Vaasa, represented from Finland, and Cleantech Bulgaria, obviously from Bulgaria, that's been working on this project for 18 months or so. And we're coming to now where we'll showcase a lot of the materials today that we have been developing. First part of the agenda today, so we have this is the online hybrid part. We'll be giving a quick overview about clusters, why clusters, and what clusters do in terms of the vision of the endurance. Then we'll be looking at some of the resources developed through this project, and then we'll have a presentation from Savonia and the Kuopio Water Cluster. They'll give some examples about how they've been working, and there'll hopefully be time for Q&A, but I will quickly pass straight over to my colleague Erwan, our partner, that will present the first part.
Colleague as well. Hi, good morning, everyone. So my name is Erwan Mouazan. I am a senior researcher at the University of Vaasa in Finland. And I will browse you through a little bit of background in relation to why we actually have been involved in the last 18 months on that project. So, I mean, some things are quite familiar for all of you since most of you are representative of some clusters, but at least it's a nice way to frame why we're talking about that. So the first part is obviously the poly crisis we are facing from an environmental perspective. We are all aware of climate change. I think we don't need to reopen that up, but there's also biodiversity loss, and there's also pollutions in relation to these two environmental dimensions. So the challenge is obviously to come up with a way to decouple social and economic development from this kind of burden on the environment. So it's a big challenge. Different policies have been placed into that to answer those challenges. Circular economy has been deemed as a promising avenue actually to rethink how we produce and how we consume. And it's pretty much aligned with what the Green Deal at EU level is trying to answer to. So of course, we need to reduce our CO2 emissions by 55% in the next 5 years. And we are looking at carbon neutrality by 2050. So for that, there's a lot of challenges, obviously, to see how companies and SMEs can relate to that. And those transition pathways, if they are sort of set up at the EU level or national level, things are actually happening on the ground in territories with SMEs. You know, most of EU companies are actually SMEs, and they need to be activated to engage in this transition. But the thing is that there's lots of barriers from SMEs perspective to actually achieve this more circular economy. There's the knowledge and awareness challenge. Some companies are still not aware of how they can actually activate, and they don't necessarily have the right skills to think differently, to come up with new business models that reduce resources use. So there's also possibly a cultural resistance when we think about this green transition and this circular economy. We have to rethink how we make business, and it's not necessarily, you know, coming as something taken for granted. So new mindset have to be sort of activated as well. From other type of barriers, we can think about regulatory and admin burdens as well. If you're an SME, it's not always easy to comply with what is being asked from an administrative perspective. Sometimes fundings are missing, or the type of support from governmental perspective are not exactly what SMEs are looking for to actually engage in this kind of transition. Limited financial resources. I think whatever transition you're trying to achieve, if it's digital or green, SMEs are lacking funds and don't know necessarily how to get the right funds to engage in this type of initiatives. And then there's more technical or supply chain challenges. What kind of new materials should we be looking at? What kind of new partnerships should be addressed to have this kind of ecosystem in place that thinks from a circularity perspective? And obviously, there's also the technological limitations that require extra fundings, et cetera, et cetera. But to address those barriers, actually, we think that clusters can be very well positioned to become this circular economy catalyst. First of all, because they are, by essence, at the center of different stakeholders, and they have this kind of collaboration approach that allows companies to possibly rethink partnerships and collaborations that can lead to more circular economy practices. They are the heart of innovation as well, from being in this triple, quadruple helix position where they have direct connections with R&D departments, universities, and they can also engage with specific research programs. So they have these nice positions actually to activate innovation. They also are well positioned to be at the heart of passing the message from SMEs to policymakers. So they have this kind of policy advocacy role that also can and is necessary to support circular economy. And eventually, they can support the type of benefits expected from an economical perspective and from an ecological or environmental perspective. But to do that, there's different type of activities that clusters needs to be doing. Which can be summarized in this kind of 4 points. So inspire and train, of course, as clusters, there's a role in sort of capacity building, equipping SMEs with the right new skills, the right methods and approach to be possibly able to shift to this kind of circular economy thinking. They have this sort of strong role in supporting and strengthening companies. So it can be from looking at what kind of fundings are happening at EU level, developing the right type of partnerships to actually make sure that this kind of strategies can be activated. But it's also about building bridges. Clusters. Some of you might be focusing on one specific type of sector, but circular economy happens at the boundaries also of different sectors. So clusters may also have this strong role in crossing bridges between members of one cluster, between other clusters, and also between all the extended ecosystem that is happening in a region that might not be directly in contact with a cluster. And the last but not least, strategize locally. Again, clusters are kind of embedded in territories, and there's a strong challenge and opportunities in co-creating solutions with the local environment, the local stakeholders, based on the local resources, local strengths of the local actors. So those are the sort of strategies that we believe in and that we think should be sort of pushed forward. And that's where endurance somehow comes into place. And we'll bridge now, make the link with Raquel from AMUEBLA, will concretely let us know more about what kind of tools and approaches fit within this kind of strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we are here because of the Endurance Project. The Endurance Project, here is a little bit of information about the project. This project started in October 2023 and it will finish in September 2025. It's an Erasmus Plus project that was co-funded by the European Commission, and we have 4 partners, as you know. We have CLEAN, we have the University of Vaasa, we have Clean Tech Bulgaria, and then we have AMUEBLA. I come from AMUEBLA, which is the furniture cluster of the region of Murcia in the southwest east of Spain. And the idea behind this project is around three main axes. The first one is the European Green Deal, especially because of the European Green Deal industrial plan and the need to develop new skills for new jobs, and also the implementation of the plan itself and the impact it can have in different sectors around Europe. The second one is about the green transition. The green transition is among the top interest for clusters in Europe. And we believe, as Erwan just said, that clusters are the perfect drivers of change and also to enable these acceleration programs for SMEs and startups. And lastly, because clusters are influential agents of change, they can foster the emergence of new businesses, especially new green businesses, and they can co-design environmental industrial education, and this is the main goal of the project. So around that, we have developed green acceleration scenarios that you can see there. It's a methodology structured around 4 interconnected scenarios to help clusters to integrate these green practices in their SMEs and startups. So they have been identified based on gathering information from our countries, but also from the European cluster community on the needs and gaps related to knowledge, related to sustainability, to practices, to skills, etc. So the first scenario is entrepreneurship innovation for sustainability. The second one is cross-collaboration for sustainability. Then we have digitalization for the green transition, and we have circular systemic solutions. In the slides, there is more information about each one of the scenarios, but you can find a little bit more of information or a lot more of information in the documents that I will present. So these scenarios, as you can see, they belong to a bigger ecosystem. First, we start with the individual part, which is the sustainable entrepreneurship, talking about SMEs and companies and startups. Then we go to communities with cross-collaboration among different actors of the ecosystem, but also among different countries and different regions. Then we go to infrastructures to facilitate the transition, both in a digital and in a green way. And then we go to the bigger part, which is the bigger ecosystem, which is the circular systemic solutions. With these 4 scenarios, we aim to address 4 topics that are not often or frequently discussed enough, but are highly relevant to the green transition process for both clusters, companies, and SMEs and startups. And our idea is that with this green acceleration methodology, clusters can be equipped to design their own green acceleration initiatives as they best understand the specific needs and demands of the companies that belong into their ecosystems. So the expected results of this project, the Endurance Project, the first one is a green acceleration methodology, which was already launched in October last year. Then we have the audiovisual kit, which we are in the process of sharing right now. There is the facilitator's guide and toolkit, which will be shared right after this meeting before the end of this month. And then we have a policy paper, which will be shared with all of you most likely by the end of September. So the first result is this green acceleration methodology. It's a handbook. It describes the approach of integrating our 4 green acceleration thematic scenarios into a cluster practice. And it's presented in a handbook. It's structured around the 4 scenarios that I presented, and it provides tailored support for clusters. And it's instrumental for us. It's instrumental in helping clusters develop systemic sustainability thinking. So the way that we have structured this guide, first, just a second. If it wants to work.
Wait. Oh, no.
It's not working? Okay. So first, we describe the purpose of the scenario with some questions about the primary goals, how this encourages collective action, about how it contributes to green acceleration. Then the second part is how to approach the topic, what are the topics more relevant in that specific scenario, what are the challenges, etc. And then we go, it doesn't work. It's not working. Okay. Then we contextualize the scenario with differentiating factors like the sector or the country, and then how can clusters access the resources, which for us, it's our handbook and our training materials. And then is what the skills and the knowledge will be gained after participating in these accelerating scenarios. And then two very important parts for us are the tips from cluster teams from all around Europe, specific about their experience in those scenarios or those topics. And then is the competence framework that will be acquired after you participate with the training materials in this project. And to that end, we have developed a very complete training course on sustainability, entrepreneurship, and innovation with some training materials that are directly targeting cluster managers. And we also have included 24 practical tools. Some of them, we will be working with them in the workshop later on. And we have compiled all of them into each one of the training materials. And also what we have done is we have made everything freely available on the project website that I will share at the end so that you can access everything and download everything for free. It's available in English. So the second result was the audiovisual kit, and we have here today some of the people that were featured in our interviews. But what we have done is we have been compiling best practices both from clusters and from SMEs and startups from all around Europe. And we have interviewed them basically so that they tell us what they are doing and specifically what tips they can give to other clusters or to other companies to start their sustainability journeys. For clusters, I think it's a little bit more transversal or more focused on the ecosystems. But from the part of the companies, it's very interesting to see companies from very different sectors because we have companies who produce oil and furniture companies and companies from the water sector, very different companies, to share their journey in the green transition and to encourage other companies to do the same. And we have also prepared these fact sheets that are a summary of each one of those best practices that they can be downloaded also from the website. And in this case, we have also linked them to the Sustainable Development Goals that they are more relevant for. And then we have the result that we are currently finalizing, which is the facilitator's guide. And our idea with this result is to give clusters a practical tools so that they can organize their own workshops for green transformation or green acceleration. So in this guide, we provide practical steps with templates, with also ideas for activities, content suggestion to organize your own workshops. And it's almost finalized. We want to share it. This is a sneak peek of what's going to be on the guide. We want to share it before the end of the month. But basically, we tell you how to prepare for the workshop, how to structure your workshop, depending if you're targeting one company or more than one companies, but also depending on if you want to have a workshop that is going to be just 1 hour or 3 hours or a full day or even more than that. And we give you tips for that. And we also give you tips in terms of content, the kind of content that you can include and which activities you can do at that workshop, and also some icebreakers that you can use that are specifically related to sustainability. It's actually it's very interesting, and we are very proud of all the results. But I think this is the most practical result that we have developed within the project. And then the last one, which we are working on, is the policy paper. In this policy paper, what we want to do is to summarize all of the experience and the knowledge that we have gained within the project, not only from our own organizations, but also from all the conversations that we have had with the cluster community during the project. It's a policy paper that will collect all of the results and all of the information, and it will be available in September. This is our website. You can find all of the results from the project, more information about the project, resources that we have been compiling because we think are relevant and interesting for the cluster community. All of that is available on the project website. And this is everything on my side. And thank you very much for attending today's workshop for the Endurance Project.
Okay. But, welcome. Cool, but now on to something a little bit different but related. We have some people from Savonia that would like to come up, and they're just going to share a little bit around their kind of journey around working with clusters and ecosystem developments. I'm not sure who's presenting first. You have three people presenting. This should work.
That's great. Showing your own screen. Sorry.
Perfect. Thank you. Yes, here. So, good morning, everyone. Also to those online, and thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to be here today. My name is Bailey Lähdesmäki, and I work at Savonia University of Applied Sciences as a research development and innovation expert, and also project manager for the Water Smart Connect project, which we are partners in with some of you as well. And I have two of my lovely colleagues here today.
Hello, my name is Tiina Haatainen. I'm a senior specialist at Savonia University of Applied Sciences, and then I'm also the cluster manager of Kuopio Water Cluster.
Good morning. My name is Heikki Sirviö. I work for the Regional Council of North Savo as a regional development manager.
And today we will give a short description of a use case from our regional point of view of how we have been able to impact our clusters and their members to be a bit more sustainable and innovative.
No.
No? Yes. All right, so to set the scene, here is a little bit of information about our region. Some of you have had the pleasure to join us, and if you have not, welcome. We are a strong innovator right in the center of Finland, and we actually have quite a few educational institutions and research institutions in our area, which makes us very strong in the way that we approach research, development, and innovation. And down at the right-hand corner, you can see our smart specializations that we focus on in our region, and that also sets the scene for our cluster landscape. But something that's interesting about the Finnish context is that the universities of applied sciences are in fact designated as the implementers of regional development policy, which means that we are often the orchestrators of our regional clusters and ecosystems. And a little bit about our University of Applied Sciences. It's one of the largest in Finland and also one of the most multidisciplinary. And we also have experience in different kinds of EU funding instruments. And as I mentioned, we do focus on our smart specialization strategies and how we implement them on a regional level. So as you can see here, all of our research units are actually quite closely aligned with our smart specialization strategies, which we will show a little bit later. And therefore, not only are our research areas aligned with our regional priorities, but they're also aligned, therefore, with our clusters. So you can see a very good match. Bio and circular, which is one of our smart specializations. It's one of our research fields, and surprise, surprise, it's also one of our clusters. The same goes for energy, agri-food, health, water, and so on. It is important to note that we are not the orchestrators of all of them. We do have one that is a legal independent entity, and then one that we are co-orchestrating. And also to set the stage of why this is important for our region, and therefore for the EU, we have to align with the regional development strategies and operations. Maybe I can give it over to Heikki to say a few words.
Yeah, actually, the purpose of this slide is to tell you how the state policies and the regional development interact in Finland. So these are the contents of the regional development decision by the current government. And this is created cooperatively between regions and the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Employment in Finland. And this sets the priorities for one government period. And what I have been using this for example, during last year and this year, I have been drafting the regional development plan. So this is the content which we want to interpret regionally. And also the good side of the Finnish governing system is that actually there's a lot of effort between regions and state ministries in coming up with these contents. What is important right now, how we should do the regional development work. And perhaps in this context, it would be good to note that like I said, my employer is the Regional Council of North Savo, and it is a municipally owned regional development authority. So we represent the regional interest. We have administrative tasks in regional development and regional planning. And one strategic choice regarding the smart specialization has been that we have for a longer period emphasized the need to have strong RD&I ecosystems combining with the smart specialization spearheads. And some of them have organized as clusters, which we have strongly encouraged.
And funded, so thank you. And how that links to Savonia's work is since the Regional Council is very strongly involved in the way that we support the businesses and the ecosystem in general, it means that Savonia takes a strong role to build up and orchestrate those ecosystems and clusters. And as we said, we get a lot of the ERDF funding allocated from the Regional Council to support the ecosystem work and operating the clusters. Of course, this is a project life cycle, so that means we have to be pretty effective and try to build a robust ecosystem to move forward with. But a few examples of the cluster work that has been continuously ongoing for decades is Kuopio Water Cluster. And we'll tell a little bit about that, but also I would like to mention one of our regional strengths, which is the super ecosystem. You can see it down here. It is one of the few meta clusters that we have certified in Finland, and it puts together our regional clusters and tries to cross-pollinate the RDI and business. And instead of keeping all of the ecosystems and clusters in silos, we try to facilitate the cross-pollination and cooperation between them, specifically in a way that drives the green transition. And to tell a little bit about a excellent case example from our region, surprise, surprise, Kuopio Water Cluster.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Just a few words. So there, as Bailey said, there are several clusters functioning and they have different systems, how they are operating, but I'll tell you about Kuopio Water Cluster. We are originally founded by our 5 founding members, which you can see here in the circle, which are the Savonia University of Applied Sciences, and then the LUKE, so the Natural Resources of Finland, then the University of Eastern Finland, and Finnish Institute for Health and Welfare, and then also the Geological Survey of Finland. So we all have water research, and that was the starting point when we noticed in the 90s that we are all doing kind of similar projects around water, so why shouldn't we combine our forces? And then we thought that we will expand a little bit our functions. So we started as as a research-based cluster, but then nowadays we also have about 70 business members, from startups to big companies, and everything to do with water, both end users of water, so water-intensive industries, and and also then like small startups that have maybe some measurement device related to water.
A good thing to mention also is that the public authorities have funded continuously investments into facilities and equipment, which gives a good foundation to the cluster work and attracting different kinds of members and providing value for startups, SMEs, and the collaboration between the businesses.
Yes, we hold quite extensive testing and piloting facilities with our 5 founding members. that companies are frequently using, and we also rent, for example, research space and things like that. In addition, of course, the normal cluster business as like presenting in events and doing this networking, for example. We have chosen the 3 focus areas for our cluster related to water. Those are the zero emission industry, so dealing with the water heavy industry in Finland, which is mainly pulp and paper and also mining industry. Then our other focus is on environment, the prevention of pollution of water and groundwater, also the management of agricultural water and industrial water. And third focus is so-called smart water solutions, that is related to digitalization in water sector.
A good point to notice there is that those align very strongly with the needs and competences of the SMEs. And that's also how we ensure alignment between the cluster activities and supporting our regional companies.
Yep. And as said, we hold an extensive piloting facilities both in our campus area, where we have a lot of labs and expertise, about 150 experts concentrated on water. But then we also have like these on-site pilot testing facilities. We do a lot of information sharing, networking, visibility and marketing. And then also one big part of our activities is this joint project activities, both on national and international level. Okay, then I have a few examples of projects that maybe are examples of how we function together in the projects with the companies. So these are just some examples of small company projects that small companies come with us with some specific issue. For example, this testing of ox-tube device, and then we do a little bit like paid project for them. We test their product. We give them impartial information, how is their equipment working and so forth.
And this is a good example also how we support the green transition aims of the companies. For example, helping to identify some of the opportunities and then supporting them through the process, even helping them with the proposals and implementing the projects. At the same time, we are providing the services and cluster support for them.
Yep. Then we also have bigger projects that we are running. I have been running. So one example is, for example, this swim project that is now concentrated on smart water management. This was a project led by Nokia, which is a big company in Finland. And the aim of this project was to test the online monitoring system for the water network. And in addition to have like these big companies, then we also involved several smaller companies that wanted to test their equipment and how it's working in these water networks.
And this is a good example of how those mini ecosystems are formed, and the larger companies and research and educational institutions are able to share the knowledge with the SMEs, especially if some of those SMEs and startups are not so well versed in RDI projects, and it might be a little bit hard to get going. So it sometimes helps to be having someone hold your hand throughout the process.
Yes. And this project was funded by Business Finland, so it's a national project. And then one other example is related to agri-food, and actually this project called SMAKRI, it was financed by the Ministry of Education and Culture Finland, and one big goal of this project was actually combine the resources of both Kuopio Water Cluster and the agri-food cluster North Savo. So we did this project together where we did piloting on the field. So we had weather stations and other measurement stations, and we're trying to research on things like how to manage the water in the fields when the climate change is coming, and how to, for example, take total usage of flooding in the springtime when the snow is melting. That's always a yearly issue in Finland. So that was and also then creating this kind of workbook for farmers and stuff like that. And one big point also then to combine the resources of agri-food and water and how we could better collaborate together. Oh, still one.
Well, this is the big project with another example of another industrial collaboration.
Yeah, so we also did the collaboration project with Agnico Kittilä Gold Mine, where we tested for 8 months this biological water purification process. As one goal was to find out how this biological project for removing nitrogen is working throughout the winter. So the goal was to find out if it's working for their mine waters when the temperature is -40 degrees. And it was working quite fine because next year they decided to build a full-scale MBBR.
Yes, so thank you very much, and I hope that gives a good overview of how we have been working in our region, supporting our clusters and using them as the drivers for the green transition with our SMEs and other quadruple helix stakeholders. Thank you.
I don't go too far. We may have some questions if anyone has any questions. So we're kind of ahead of schedule, so we have a bit of time. If anyone has questions, we have some people online, so feel free to write in the chat, and Juan will share any kind of questions. But I don't know if anyone has any questions that are here in person on any of the presentations so far. Owen?
Yeah, I mean, if there's
Yeah.
if there's no questions, then I can always come up with one. Thanks, people from North Savo. It was really interesting to hear what you're doing. I really like this idea of super ecosystems. I think when we are now, from a researcher's perspective, we look at transitions as more and more multi-systems transition, and not just one transition of the water sector from linear to circular, non-green to more green. But we try to look at it more from this kind of multi-systems innovation. And I think somehow what you're trying to do is with this mega super ecosystem is to sort of implement that in practice. So I don't know if you could reflect upon that, like how have you concretely organized this mega cluster of cluster, and what are the challenges at the moment in order to make it like as efficient as possible? If you want to come to, yeah.
So very good question, and like always, it is still a work in progress. Ecosystem work is never ending, basically, but we have a good foundation. And the reason we started the super ecosystem is because we noticed that the clusters were siloed. Some of them were very strong in themselves, like Kuopio Water Cluster, and they already had some collaboration with the other clusters, but also some of the clusters weren't even established at the time of super ecosystem, but they were just like ecosystems that were running around a little bit with the same group together. But we wanted to somehow give a better structure and support mechanism for these clusters and ecosystems to mature. And that's why we took a twofold approach by supporting the clusters that were already established, helping the emerging and upcoming clusters to build their strategy, their aim, understand what kind of stakeholders they have, and how to create value for them. So we've tried to put that all together and build a platform where these clusters and their members could interact, both by identifying some of the challenges and competences they have that possibly they could work together with some of the other clusters and members to solve, but also try to strengthen the collaboration regionally and take it to a more international level, because we wanted the clusters to be drivers also of the international possibilities for the SMEs. And that's why we wanted to take more of a, well, as you said, cross-disciplinary approach, since we know nowadays it's not just one sector anymore. It's what you can do together with different sectors. And nowadays we are trying to find a way regionally to continue the super ecosystem, because as we know, publicly funded projects struggle with double funding regulations. So what you do in one project, you can't do in the next project. So we need to figure out a way that it can become institutionalized and not lose the momentum that we have built up and the trust in the clusters and the members, because we have seen really good results so far. For example, the Smagri project is a perfect one. And how do we build that in the future? And what we notice nowadays is that some of the members themselves don't stay in one industry vertical. They either integrate with another to produce a service, a product, whatever, or to supply a product and service. So in that end, we also need to make sure that the clusters work together and we have a mechanism like Super Ecosystem to provide a suitable platform for collaboration. I hope that answered it okay.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
I have a follow-up question to that. A little bit, obviously, in the Danish context, obviously, we are, I think, national clusters. I think there's 13 funded in different kind of priority areas and sectors. And obviously, we do collaborate. It's maybe not on a level of a super cluster ecosystem level. What's the biggest learning from having a more defined super ecosystem
Well,
in relation to collaboration? Because I presume some work better than others.
That's very true. And let's not jump into the topic of cluster policy and national strategies because we'll be here for hours if we do that, as some of you know. One of the strengths is that when you have the national clusters, you have agency and continual funding to operate. And that allows you to have a deeper and more long-term impact, especially when it's aligned strategically with the national aims and the needs of the members. However, since we're working in a regional context, it doesn't apply the same way because we don't have the same kind of national cluster policy in Finland, and therefore we also don't have this direct governmental funding for certain periods of time to operate a cluster. So in a way, it's it's a balancing act there. But one thing that it means is that when we have a regional focus like our clusters and our meta cluster, it gives us a little bit more hands-on opportunity to approach the challenges that they have and a little bit more opportunity to get close to facilitating the collaboration between the ecosystems and the clusters, not only the cluster orchestrators, but also the members. As we mentioned, a lot of these clusters are operated by Savonia. So even though we have 4 campuses in 3 cities, we are still geographically quite close together. And a lot of us sit in the same hallway. So it's very easy to meet at the coffee table. And that really helps. Also because we have our laboratories or other research facilities where we can interact very closely with our company members. So pros and cons.
There is one question online for you. Since you are already building one large supercluster, do you think it's necessary to add more clusters to the region? Also, is it clear to the private sector which cluster they should choose, or are they joining a supercluster?
So for the first question, yes, we do have emerging clusters. For example, now we have the Comprehensive Security Cluster that has a project, and actually the Regional Council is orchestrating that one. And this aligns very strongly with our regional priorities. It's one of the new cross-cutting themes, as well as the competences within our region. And as we know, it's a hot topic nowadays and for the last few years. So we have answered that need by building up an official cluster. It is in process, but quite good grounds now. And then we also have a project that is evaluating the interest and need for an events, creative industries, and tourism cluster, because that is also one of our regional priorities. And then the second question was about the...
Is it clear to the private sector
yes.
which cluster they should choose?
Yes and no. So some of the members, it's very clear. They're in one industry. And just because they're a member of one cluster doesn't mean that they can't interact with other clusters and other members, because the cluster should act as a platform to bridge the different members and clusters and build a network, kind of broker some kind of interaction between members that they see some value or opportunities between. So if it's a member that wants to join a single cluster, totally fine. Most of our clusters have no membership fees. So there is no risk. There's only reward. So a lot of them join multiple clusters just because why not? You know. However, some of them do decide to join one and then see the value of joining another, or they just don't see the value of overburdening and overloading themselves with too many networks when you can have a, one-stop shop for all. But this is actually one of our ideas for Super Ecosystem, is that you can have one membership to the meta cluster and then have it trickle down to the other clusters. But we're not there yet. Yes.
Yeah. You think your answering should come up?
Yeah, because otherwise online there.
Speed up.
Speed up.
Just say it if you want.
Just want to hear what kind of inspiration do you have? Are you the only one on European soil, like only mega cluster? And where do you seek your inspiration? Yeah.
So the question was that where do we find our inspiration for this meta cluster, and are we the only ones in Europe? Actually, no, we are not the only ones. I think there are nearly 30 now that are certified by the European Cluster Collaboration Platform, which is one of the governing bodies certifying clusters as actual clusters. And if you would like to check any of the EU clusters, please visit that website, European Cluster Collaboration.eu. Yes. And I think most of the clusters here are also certified on that platform. And if you are not, then please look into it and see what is required for you. So there are many others, but in Finland there are only 2 others. And we are the most multidisciplinary of all of them. And we find our inspiration by understanding what the needs are of our members and benchmarking what kind of operational models would be suitable based on other examples from the EU. Of course.
Yeah, I was wondering, so is this a part project? And the governance, how does it look like? Methods?
You ask a really hard question because this is a question I've also been asking for a little while. And it is a little bit challenging just because when you are a funded project that ends, what do you do after that? What is your continuity strategy to ensure the operations somehow live on? And that's something that we're trying to figure out now. We do still have a project that supports the activities a little bit, especially the collaboration between the clusters and supporting new emerging clusters. But we still are trying to figure out the best ecosystem business model and governance structure, which includes the revenue streams, to ensure that Super Ecosystem will continue and help our clusters and their members, especially with their triple transition aims and how we can help the members, especially internationalize. And that's a tricky thing to do. If anybody has good practices, learnings, my email address was up there. Please send me as much information. I will read all of it. Anything else?
So any other questions? Yes, Carolina.
Have a comment. Because I work in Sweden, we are even the national state. We are 24 clusters with different sectors. We struggle with the fact that the clusters are, located in all Sweden. We are still trying to help them collaborate, and they still work outside of them. But we struggle with exactly the same. Like we started with a project, and now we have managed to finance the association for 4 years. But it has been projects after project after project.
Exactly.
And then you just manage to focus on internationalization or a specific topic. But this cross-sectoral collaboration has been more difficult. You don't have a more or a longer project or a more permanent. I think that's you struggle with a lot.
You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
Exactly. And if you would be interested, I would be really happy to talk a little bit more because we will also be having our 2nd ever national cluster event coming up in October. And this is something that we're going to be looking into also, is how do we join forces in a collaborative but structured way? Thank you.
Just one final comment, actually, because the question is where do you stop expanding? Because you're talking about a meta cluster regionally, then somehow you should draw connections, bridges with other national Finnish clusters. But then, you know, there's the neighbors in Sweden that might be facing exactly the same issues. And so are we talking about a meta cluster?
Well, no, there is already the European Cluster Alliance, so we can't step on anyone's feet. So absolutely not. But maybe the Nordic version? Yes. Sounds good. Thank
Oh,
you.
we have one more.
Maybe I am from a Norwegian company, and then we do have clusters in Norway. And what we're doing now to solve this is exactly that we are now trying to become part of the Regional Innovation Valley. So that is basically one of the ideas that we have that might actually enable the cross-cluster collaboration. So there'll be a lot of cascade funding available if you are becoming like an innovation valley. So yeah, I'm also very happy to talk.
Definitely have been working on that already for a few years, but would be very happy to.
We have one example of cross collaboration, which is the example of the Hangover clusters are part of. So ICN represents 23 clusters around the world, many of them, but also Latin America, all focused on water and remediation. But the key thing there, because I never started this project as well 10 years ago, but it's still running now. Key thing there was that the members paid membership fees, so there needs to be some investment as well. Otherwise, you will always do projects or people running severe very quickly. So I think that having that core, it's not that much money, but it's enough of things going. Activities that are not just
It's very true, and we have been a member of ICN and very grateful for the opportunities that we have taken advantage of through the network and also the learnings and the good friends. So if you are not a member of ICN yet, can highly recommend it. Some of the benefits that we have gained, I would say, being invited to the best projects, because it's hard to build consortia nowadays. It's one of the key advantages in proposals. And, you know, concepts are great, but it's about how it's implemented. And that's where the consortia composition is key. And I think ICN really does a great job at that, of evaluating what are the competences and activities possible for the different partners and building the best puzzle possible. And it's been really nice that we've been invited to a few of these proposals. And then, of course, gotten the chance to work with some of you as well. Some of the other things that have been good for us from ICN is just the international networking. You know, we wouldn't have had the chances to meet clusters or actors from South America or South Africa as easily. So that also gives a huge opportunity to new collaboration as well as new funding, not only for the cluster itself, but for the members, and then business opportunities for member-to-member collaboration. And I have benchmarked ICN's model. Don't worry. And when we're talking about the membership fees and what kind of financial or otherwise contributions different members should subscribe to, that really comes down to what kind of value creation have you designed? What is your offering portfolio that will encourage members or actors to pay a fee? Or if it's not a fee, if it's time contribution, if it's facilities, if it's expertise, if it's data, equipment, whatever it is. But what kind of contribution balances the value, and how do you design that value? And especially for different types of stakeholders, because what a research institution will value is different than what a company might value or a public authority might value. So taking that into account is something that we really need to focus on in the coming years.
Cool.
Cool.
Thanks, baby.
Thank you.
So we are up on time now. So I guess we still obviously have people online. Thanks for joining online. We will share everything, all slides, materials, all the handbook, everything from Endurance. So thanks for joining online. And the rest of you here, there'll be a 5-minute break and then we'll be doing some activities together. So, so thanks for joining and hope you all have a good day.